Namaskar, good evening, Yonapot Kivanok. My name is Sudin and I am presenting the episode of Diaspora Diaries today on behalf of the Indian Embassy here in Hungary and the Amrita Shergill Cultural Center. The Diaspora Diaries is a series of talk shows where Indians in Budapest share their views about different aspects of India and its culture. But before I start, I would like to thank the Embassy of India and the Amrita Shergill Cultural Center and its director, Mr. Tanuja Shankar, for giving me this opportunity and the privilege. My gratitude to everyone who has taken the time today to sign in, to tune in. I hope it's worth your time. So let's begin. People and ecology. That's the topic of today's talk. And ecology. Ecology refers to the relationships of organisms with each other and with their physical environment. The organism in question today is the human, of course, and whose relationship with vis-a-vis its environment probably is best summed up as it's complicated, to borrow a social media phrase. Now, the focus of today's talk is people of India and their ecology, living traditions. Now, why living, you will see in the course of this presentation. Traditions are transmissions of cultures and beliefs from generation to generation. Now, there is a lot to talk about the generation tradition that is thousands of years old and is as diverse as India's and one that still lives on. I will try my best to be within the allotted time, but in case I happen to go beyond, I would in advance apologize and I hope that you'll bear with me and stay till the end. Hope you'll find it interesting and learn something new. I certainly did. Here you will find some stories from different timelines, different communities, different cultures, and different parts of the country, some legends and some facts. So let's dive in. Now, people and their interaction with the surrounding environment has always been quite complex and has constantly evolved. Human is the only organism who can modify its environment, and in fact we have been witnessing it to the extent that now we see a world which is far different from what it was a few thousands of years ago, a few hundreds of years ago as well. Modern human, in fact, somehow has come to see nature as something external outside that they go to probably during weekends when they find time. You know this line from this song Sadda Hak, which says, "O eco-friendly nature ke rakshak, main bhi hu nature," is actually a very good reminder of who we are. But it was not always like this. In fact, at the time of the Vedas, any guesses how far back? Humans saw themselves as very much in nature and as part of nature and not apart from nature. And they were not even considered themselves as very powerful, and more powerful elements of the nature were personified as gods, like the sun, the moon, the earth, the fire, the water, rain. In fact, Indra, the rain god, was the most powerful, perhaps for obvious reasons. Now, the Vedic society but was not alone in seeing nature as sacred or in worshipping nature. In fact, it shared that with the contemporary societies of that time, maybe the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, Babylonians, and you name them. While most traditions elsewhere got lost with time, fortunately in India, the practice, the ethos, and the traditions have survived even today. And you can see them in the mainstream society as well. So let's have a quick look at some of the Vedic references where the relationship of nature and humans is brought out. Now you see this. This I've got from some of the Vedic texts that I found online. Whatever I dig out from you, O earth, may that have quick regeneration again. I mean, this is very clear that nature was respected, its blessings were sought, and gratitude was expressed by the people of the Vedic societies. They saw sacred in trees, animals, mountains, and other forces of nature. Now hold this thought. They also realized that some of these elements needed care. Now that is like nature as powerful as well as fragile. It's very interesting. Now, several injunctions to that can be found in the Vedas. For example, the Rig Veda hymn, which translates to "Do not harm the environment, do not harm the water and the flora. May the waters remain fresh, do not harm the water." So, this very much sounds like the spate of messages that we hear around us these days regarding environment conservation. But this was, mind you, 4,000 odd years back. Now I gave you the timeline here. Mata Bhumi Putroham Prithviya. Earth is my mother and I am her son. This is Prithvi Sukta Atharva Veda. Now, can there be a more significant assertion of being of nature? The Vedic society, in fact, elevated the whole sacred view of nature and caring for nature to the level of dharma, righteousness, not dharma, the religion. Maybe they saw that the potential harm that humans could cause to their environment in far future, or maybe it was born out of an experience of their own in the past. Who knows? But a study of Vedas from a deep ecological perspective may throw some interesting and useful tips. Now, who else shares this ethos of nature worship with the Vedic society? Let's find out. Now, here is a quick timeline going back 1.5 million years of the presence of various humans, pre-humans, Neolithic, from the Neolithic era in the Indian subcontinent. I'll bring your attention to the number 2 with 9,000 from the top. Says where you can see Bhimbetka rock shelters. These are near Bhopal, my city. We're less than 20 kilometers from there. So anyone who, whenever you're traveling there, do take a time to visit there. It's very interesting. Here in this timeline, you can see where the Vedic period is situated, what comes before and after. Now, let's talk about some of the communities in nature who shared some of the elements of nature worship that we just saw in the previous slide. Now, there is a group of communities in India, as indigenous communities, as globally known as, and these exist around the world. And in India, who their lives are deeply connected to their natural surroundings. Everyone has heard the term Adivasi, yes, which means early settlers. We know of them more as scheduled tribes or STs, but it doesn't have the same ring. Now, their lineage has been traced as far back as to the Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and even uh, older. So that would put them at least like 7,000 plus years. Uh, like for instance, the Munda tribes, especially people from the eastern part of India, Jharkhand, Bihar must be familiar with that name. They trace their lineage, and it has been through DNA analysis and all that confirmed that their lineage goes back to the Indus Valley civilization. And they are not alone. There are tribes in MP and elsewhere in Tamil Nadu who probably are of that vintage. Now, most tribes follow animistic traditions. Animistic means where non-human entities like plants, animals, and even inanimate objects like rocks or even phenomena are considered to have spiritual essence. That is also something we see a trace of in the Vedic people as well as in the modern Hindu philosophy. Uh, Unfortunately, the Indus Valley scripts have not been fully deciphered, and so if and when they do get deciphered, they might unlock a lot of information. Now, the picture on the screen here is from the it's a shrine, it's a sacred grove. This term will come back again, and we'll see this in more detail later in the presentation. This is a sacred grove of the Kurumba tribes. They are based in Nilgiri mountains. which anybody knows where they are located? Well, they are located at the tri-junction of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka. And Nilgiris are one of the oldest mountain ranges in India. Not the oldest, but one of the. Do you happen to know which are the youngest mountain ranges in India? Anybody heard a town called Uddagamandalam? No? We can search it up. Well, let's talk about this community that embodies living in symbiosis with nature, even today. There are more than 700 tribal groups in India, or the indigenous communities in India, who are intricate, whose lives are intricately linked with their natural surroundings, and they have as many conservation practices and traditions as there are tribes. But nature worship, and especially worship of trees and forests, is a common thread. Now, sacred forests or groves has been one of the mechanisms by which a patch of forest has been protected while the rest has been used. So uh, has this has also functioned as one of the nature's gene banks. It's a beautiful way of preserving uh, the gene pool. Now, and the sacredness of trees and forests is definitely not limited to this community, as we all know from our culture that, for example, think of trees like peepal and tulsi and neem. They are all sacred, even in the Hindu traditions. Now, let us fast forward 1500 years, when this indigenous community's relationship with their forests received a severe jolt. In the 1870s, when the British, by passing the Forest Act, took effective control, monopoly control of all the forests in the country. And in one stroke, these communities who were like sovereigns of forests became encroachers. More than 40 small and big revolts by tribal communities took place during the Raj, right up to the year 1941. Some of the names here, like Ramji Gond, Birsa Munda, Rani Gaidinliu, Komuram Bhim, Satyaram Raju, must be familiar to most of you. And these people are now getting some recognition for their role both in freedom struggle. And most of these revolts were basically for the control of the forests that was wrested from their hands by the British. And like one of the earliest tribal revolts is said to have taken place in Bastar in 1774, actually, by the Halba tribe, and the reason it was provoked by the desecration of the deity or the sacred shrine by the British and other rulers. This picture that you see on your screen, I'll quickly run you through that. On the top left is the one from MP, Western MP, Alirajpur Jhabua area, Bhil tribes. And for them, this tree, Kalam tree, is the sacred tree where their Kalam Dev resides. And they put these pots and other figurines, terracotta figurines, as offerings. The Kalam tree, the botanical name is Mitragaina parviflora, and it is a medicinal tree used in treatment of jaundice by these communities. The one opposite that on the top is from the Jharkhand, Ho tribes, and this is their sacred grove. And this gentleman with the bag is their priest, and he is in fact Christian, because a few of these community tribes have converted to Christianity, but they have continued their animistic traditions and worship. The one bottom left is from Tamil Nadu, Nilgiris, the Kurumba that we saw in the previous slide as well. And the one opposite is a Gond Bhagat, who is doing some rituals under this tree. Now, talking about Gonds. The Gonds are one of the more well-known and largest indigenous communities in India. Usually, they spread around the central part of the country, stretching from the Chandrapur area of Maharashtra right up to Odisha, uh, spanning most of southeast MP. Now, here you can see, please note this, that the way of nature and the Gondi way of life are quite synonymous. And that says a lot about the community. Now, did you know that Gonds were once rulers of central India till the mid 18th century? And they kept even the powerful forces of Mughals and Marathas at bay. And they had also risen in revolt many times over the century against the British. In fact, there is a movie, upcoming movie, I think titled RRR. It is said that it is fictionalized life of Komuram Bhim and Satyaram Raju, who were the leaders of the revolt in the 20th century. Uh, um, and they were part of the Gond community from Adilabad, which I think is now Telangana. Gonds also are, they venerate plants and animals, especially the saja tree, the tree that you can see bottom left of your screen. It is called the crocodile bark tree because of the similarity of its bark with the crocodile hide. Some of the trees said to hold water in their trunks. It is the abode of their Badadev. Another tree that they revere and consider sacred is the mahua. We'll learn about this tree later on in more detail. I will here would like to share a personal story of mine from 2 decades ago. I had the privilege of working with a Gond healer in MP called Bhagat Baba, and we were working on a medicinal plant conservation project with him. And he 2 days a week he would see patients, and these patients were not villagers from the local village. They were people coming as far as Delhi, Bombay, Nagpur, Bhopal, Amravati, you name it, and they would line up from morning 5:30, and he would see them throughout the day, sometimes ending at 7, 8 in the night. And throughout the time, he would not eat anything. 3 days a week, he would go into the forest to collect the medicinal plants, barks, roots, etc., leaves. And he had a ritual. Before going into the forest, he would have his bath. After entering the forest, he will first offer his prayers, seek permission before taking anything, seek permission from the forest, from the trees. He would thank them after he has collected what he wants, and he would collect only what he needed for that week and not more. And he was very, very careful and meticulous when he would take out any root, not to damage critical roots of the tree or the plant that might endanger its survival. And all this, for all this, he would not collect any fees. In fact, many of his people who came to see him were chronically ill or terminally ill patients who had whose the modern medicine had given up on them. And many of them were rich and offered a lot of money, but he would not take anything. I asked him, why, and he said, if I do that, one, it will not, the medicine will not have its effect, and two, it will weaken my siddhi. So this is his knowledge, which he gained mostly as part of the tradition, not from a college. And sadly, none of the younger generation in that community at that time in that village wanted to learn this tradition or take up this tradition, which was what we were trying to address. Anyway, that is that. And talking about the sacredness of trees, it is something that is shared in India across cultures and across faith. Actually, it's quite global as well. But let's look at what it is. Now, trees transcend faith literally. Now, you can read on your screen, picked up the elements of sacredness of trees from different faiths. Uh, I would like to bring your attention to the second one from the Vriksha Ayurveda. Dasakupa samovapi, dasavapi samohrida, dasahrida samaputra, dasaputra samodruma. Here, this shloka powerfully brings out the importance accorded to trees. Here, it is comparing one tree's value to 10 suns. So it basically says 10 wells are equal to one step well or a big jalashaya. The 10 of them are, step wells or ponds. 10 ponds are equal to one jalashaya or big water body. And 10 of these are equal to one sun, and 10 suns are equal, one tree is equivalent to 10 suns. So that is the value trees were accorded. And you can find trees being revered or protected by all faiths in India. Now, so let's learn more about the sacred groves. And here again on your screen, you can see what is important. I'd like to point out here is that the term sacred groves, in that the term sacred is very important, because that is what gives sanction, that is what protects these groves uh, um, from any kind of damage. Now, there are always social taboos, shared beliefs that are very important in order to ensure this protection. It says, the one quote I read was, "Faith can move mountains, but when it comes to sacred growth, it has helped protect forests." Literally, it is true. So, if we are seeing certain patches of forest, some groves, if you go, and they are treasure troves of biodiversity, the ones who still pristine, yes, it has this element of belief and faith has a lot to do with it. While most sacred groves are associated with Hindu gods and part of the indigenous communities as well, but there are other faiths, as we saw. Now, it is quite a very effective and cheap way of protecting a large patch of land. No money is spent on fencing. So there's a term called social fencing, and it's literally a term. Which is where the sanctions, the social sanctions, the shared beliefs, and the taboos protect that place. But the potential weakness is that once those beliefs weaken, does this the protection too, and its effectiveness therefore depends on the strength of the shared belief. Now let us look at some of the distribution of these groves across the country. Now, I tried my best. I hope the shape is quite, one can make out what it is. And by the placement of these circles, you will get a good idea of what these sacred groves are called or known as in different parts of the country. Now, here are some statistics, information, facts. Okay, so why are these important? They are important for all the reasons that you see on your screen, plus they are intricately linked to the culture of the communities. Now, there is mention of Western Ghats up there, and Western Ghats, as you know, is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites and one of the biodiversity hotspots in India as well as the world. And they play a very important role in the southwest monsoon that the Indian subcontinent gets. These Western Ghats are about 1600 kilometers long, south of Gujarat to almost southern tip of Kerala. And these sacred groves are a huge refuge, and in fact, the last refuge of many species that are endangered or threatened outside of them. As you can read from some of the statistics, like it's really amazing, and that is why they are worth protecting. Now let us look at some of the sacred groves from different parts of the country. I've tried to bring you these from 4 different corners, starting with Kerala down south. The grove that you see here in the picture is Iringol Kav in Ernakulam, one of the largest or the largest urban metropolis in Kerala, and this is located there, 100 acres, dedicated to the goddess, who's, as you can see, is worshipped in 3 avatars throughout the day, different times of the day, in fact. And the cows in Kerala, about 200 years back, they are reasonably well documented. 200 years ago, in the Travancore Gazette, it was reported that there are 15,000, beg your pardon, sacred groves in Kerala. Recent studies have put this number at 2,000 in the entire state. As you know, Travancore state is the southern part of Kerala, and Kerala is made up of three princely states. Three basically. Yeah. So, traditionally, cows in Kerala have been associated either with private individuals or with temples managed by Devasam boards. Iringol cow is actually a home to 82 different species of trees. In just 100 acres, you have 82 different species. I'm not talking about individuals. 18 different species of spiders, 22 different species of butterflies, 4 species of amphibians, 7 species of, and that's the rich biodiversity. The groves of North Kerala support two endemic bird species, the Malabar grey hornbill and the Rufous babbler. Let's meet them in the next slide. I hope this plays and you can listen. This is this. Oops, sorry. Looks like it's not enabled for some reason. I'm sorry for this. Sorry. It was playing in the PowerPoint. Probably this application is not supporting, or I didn't do the right thing or check the right boxes. Okay, I'm very sorry for that, but hopefully you can see the picture on your screen on the top right. That is the Malabar grey babbler, and it is called Kori Vedambal in Malayalam. Try saying that, especially the non-Malayalis. And its call is the sound of the forest in Kerala. Uh, its population is directly dependent on the on the trees, or I mean, directly affected by deforestation because it needs the natural crevices of the trees for nesting. It is also called the gardener of rainforest because it disperses seeds. Uh, do you know it has a bigger and more colorful cousin? And I'll bring your attention to the bottom of the screen. That is the Great Indian Hornbill, and this is found in the eastern Himalayan ranges, mostly northeast and some parts of. You can see them in Corbett. I did, and there is a festival with the name of Hornbill celebrated in a part of the country. Do you happen to know where? Okay, let me give you a clue. In Nagaland, this bird is actually quite special and worshipped. Okay, talking about Nagaland and Northeast, let's go there. And this is a grove. The pictures showing different aspects of this grove in Meghalaya, the Khasi Hills. As you know, Meghalaya has three main hills, Khasi, Garo, and Jaintia, and three tribes who live on them, Khasi, Garo, and Jaintia. And this is Khasi Hills. Loch Intang is the generic name for the sacred groves in that area. And this particular grove is called Mawphalang. Mawphalang basically translates to grassy stones. Maw is stone, phlang is grassy. Probably you can make out why, because of the high humidity. You have mosses growing there, and there these the entrance to this grove is. You will find huge stones, and they are believed to be more than 500 years old. As you can read, they mark the boundary, particularly the entrance. At the same time, you can find these menhirs inside as well, and they are placed there in memory of the respected departed people of the community. And interesting thing is, you can make out the gender of the departed person by looking at the placement of the menhirs. If they are placed horizontally, it's a woman. Okay, so from here, let's go up north to Himachal. Now, Himachal is reported to have the largest number of sacred groves, and almost all the groves are associated with temples. And the dominant vegetation of that those groves are Devdar as Devdaru from Sanskrit, which is tree of gods. Now, in Himachal, these committees formed of 4 office bearers: Kardar, Pujari, Gur, and Bhandari manage the affairs of the grove. Kardar manages the daily affairs. Pujari, of course, does the puja, and Bhandari, Bhandar, stores, manages that. But Gur is the official spokesperson of the deity. This grove that you see at the bottom left of your screen is Shiromani Seep Devta in Sirpur, probably close to Himachal. Legend has it that a person walking in the forest saw a cow milking over a pindi, or like a shivling, and found it to be divine. And then the community got together and built this temple to Lord Shiva. And this temple is known to be around said to be around 1,000 years. In Himachal, these are called Devvan or Devta ka Jungle. Okay, from lush green, cool Himalayas to the harsh, warm, hot, dry climate of Rajasthan. In Rajasthan, sacred groves are known by various names: Orans, Malwan, Shamlads, etc. And Oran, the word comes probably from the Sanskrit Aranya for forest. Aranyakas apparently have been believed to have been written here. To the west of the Aravali's, the Orans of Bishnois are quite famous for their protection of the black buck and khejri tree. We will meet the Bishnois, that's a spoiler alert here, later in the presentation. Orans are very critical for this support local community and the animals. It is open to everyone in the community, no restrictions, except that they have to follow the rules. The authority of the deity is ultimate. One samitis manage these, and they are a very good, they conserve water. They have this the very good mechanism of conserving water. Ponds, reservoirs, etc. are part of these, so therefore they are like an oasis in the harsh arid climate. This grove on the right of your screen bottom, Naikanath, is 45 kilometers from Jaipur. It's spread across 1500 hectares, has a Shiv temple every Mahashivratri. Lakhs of people gather there. And every Monday, also nearby, thousands of people visit that. An important role that the Orans also play, like other sacred groves in other parts, is that they are a refuge of endangered animals who are protected inside these groves, but outside they face face pressures. Here, I want to talk about a very unique bird called the Great Indian Bustard, which is endemic to this area, which is endangered, and which finds protection inside these groves. It's a funny name, don't you think? And the story is that it is probably its name that cost it the race for being the national bird. Now, guesses who it lost out to? But it is the state bird of Rajasthan. It is the heaviest flying bird. And you can see this graph, its numbers. Please note how sharp the decline has been in recent times. Okay, so sacred groves, that's a good part. The bit of worrying part is this: they have survived, but they are under pressure. There are many factors, and one of them, ironically, being that of related to faith. Somewhere, temples got a little more prominence than the groves that they are associated with, and that is kind of a subtle shift that has happened. Probably, I don't know. It's having its impact on the groves. Okay, so that's it about the groves. Let's move forward. So this is a question. So can these traditional ethos and ethics still capable of protecting much of the country's diversity. Now, according to one ex-faculty at Indian Institute of Forest Management, my alma mater, and a serving senior IFS officer who has worked extensively in this field, thinks and believes that local knowledge has been found useful for ecosystem restoration, and indeed is a critical element of it, and needs to be encouraged. And that is uh, why it is topical is because of this. Now, United Nations has declared this decade as the decade of ecosystem restoration. Ecosystem restoration, environmental conservation, things have become a buzzword in the last 30 years, entering the curricula, drawing room discussions alongside climate change. Most of the discourse, of course, focuses on, and rightly so, on modern scientific solutions, business practices, behavior change, and government policies, etc., because all these are important, because some of these are causative factors for the degradation. But alongside, now there is a growing recognition that the contribution of indigenous and local communities in conserving ecology cannot be ignored. And in fact, it needs to be co-opted more actively. And we are seeing some beginnings of that globally, as well as in our own country. So this is probably the good time for us to have a quick look at some of the community-led conservation efforts that have gone on in this country, recent as well as in the past. Okay, as I told you, we will meet the Bishnois again. So here they are. Well, they are the poster people of environment activism. No story of community conservation of nature or environment is complete without their mention in India. The Bishnoi sect was founded by Guru Jambeshwar, who laid down 29 tenets. So, Bis and No, Bis No, 29. Six of these tenets are about conservation. Two of them you can see on your screen at the top, and that picture I don't need to explain. It says a lot by itself. The Bishnois have gone to great lengths over the centuries to protect their ecology, in particular the black buck that you see on your screen on the right, and in fact in all the pictures, as well as the khejri tree. Now, the most notable story is of a lady called Amrita Devi, who, along with 363 other women from the community, laid down their lives trying to protect the khejri trees from the soldiers, as you can see in this painting there, of Maharaja of Jodhpur, who wanted to cut these trees for his use. Uh, this is one of the most significant loss story for the community, and this was in the mid 1700s, mind you, and the community has passionately and diligently continued its efforts at conserving the precious ecological resources since then. And this incident has also inspired the later day Chipko movement in the 1970s. So probably you've heard of Mr. Sundarlal Bahuguna and Chandi Prasad Bhatt. Uh, so I mean, difficult to beat this kind of commitment. Do you agree? Okay, so preserving, conserving, living in harmony with gentle creatures like black bucks, probably easy. How do you live with uh, a predator, a big predator? Okay, let's see an example of that. So these are Warli, and this is a Warli community from Maharashtra. So Vagoba is their Gaon Devta. Vagoba gets the first invitation to any wedding, and they have a reciprocal relationship with the tiger or leopard. In those days, perhaps earlier times it was tiger. Now it's a leopard. As you can see, this leopard is this photograph is from the Sanjay Gandhi National Park in Borivali. As you can see, the urban landscape behind. Uh, uh, this uh, the interestingly, the Wagoba is also known as power bars by the younger members of the community. Uh, There's something very interesting that this community believes in. They say that we have to recognize that landscapes have a history before our own point of entry into them. Oh, no, brilliant. And this is relevant to the present day. They live by these ethos. Maybe they don't articulate in these words, but that's their ethos. And this is relevant for present day conservation, whether wildlife conservation or any nature conservation. The Warlis have lived amongst animals and forests for generations in Maharashtra. And they say that just like fish can't live without water, we cannot live without forests. Their paintings are very distinct. Those of you who have interest in arts and know the folk arts of India probably would recognize those paintings. Interestingly, very similar paintings are also found in near Western Odisha in the Saura tribes. Although it is said that these two tribes have not met or have had no communication, but it's an interesting fact. Now let's look at another animal and human symbiotic relationship. This is back in Kerala. This is Mannarshala temple, where the presiding deity is snake god. As remember, in Kerala, the calves or the sacred groves are dedicated either to goddess or to snake god. So this is snake god. The affairs are managed by the family, and interestingly, the priest here is actually a priestess that you see on the screen. Is she's no more, but she was the ex-priestess called the Baliyamma or the Badima. And one of the legends is that Kerala was created out of the land reclaimed by Parshuram with permission of the sea god, and it was saline, and because of the salinity, of course, it was. They could not he could not settle people to cultivate there, and on the advice of Lord Shiva, he approached the Nagaraj for help. I don't know how that has worked, but the legend is that the snakes came in there and they helped remove the salinity, and as a result, since then people and snakes have coexisted. Snakes are worshipped, and so that's an interesting legend regarding this temple, as well as this whole tradition of protecting or having the sacred groves dedicated to snakes in Kerala. Okay, let's move back up north. I hope you're not feeling dizzy. This is Mangarbani, as you can read on the screen, and please see the arrow there. You see a thing all brown around that. This patch is the Mangarbani, 274 hectares of forest, which is protected by the Gurjar community who lives around that. And this is part of the Aravlis, and it's in the border of it's in Delhi, and this community is engaged in an uphill struggle, no pun intended, against mining interests to protect this patch. So far, they have succeeded, and they haven't received any government support. Still, there is a person called Sunil Harsana from this community who has formed this Mangar Eco Club, where he educates children about their forest. A big shout out to all these communities and people who have been silently working for conservation of the ecology. Let's quickly move again to the east, and you see these creatures here again, the black bucks, but these are not endemic to Odisha, means they are not found there. They somehow came there a century ago when there was a big drought in that village. This is from Bhetanoi village in Ganjam district of Odisha, and soon after it rained, so people since then have begun to protect these animals. Now 69 other villages have joined this village, and today the number of black bucks there is more than 3000, and people leave part of their agriculture produce for these to feed on. But because of their conservation efforts, there are now people, it's become a tourist spot, and people come there to see these black bucks roaming around, because that's sort of a novelty there, and that is bringing some revenue. So here is where it's making economic sense and giving economic rewards as well, where the conservation and development are working hand in hand. Another example, quick example of conservation and livelihoods, where livelihoods is incentivizing conservation, is from Meghalaya again, but this is Garo Hills, the fixed sanctuaries. Here, the government and people are working together. They have set up 79 fish sanctuaries so far, and this is for the chocolate mahasir. This fish is called chocolate mahasir. Wow. And this effort has been going on for 70 years now. Okay, and I remember I said we'll talk about Mahua again. Now here it is, and it is Mahua is, as a spirit in more than is one. It's central to the Adivasi life in central India, particularly MP. They are the guardians of Mahua, and the tree is a kalpavriksha for them, because it's not just the Mahua. We know Mahua only for the liquor outside the community, but actually for them, Mahua is a lot more than that. The gulli has oil content, which is used for, the oil is taken out and used for cooking. The Mahua flowers, after drying, can either be brewed into Mahua liquor that you see on the screen. This lady is doing that, or it can be, pounded into a flour, Mahua flour into a flour, and can be used for eating. So it's full of protein. The dried Mahua flowers also taste like kishmish. These flowers fall mostly during the night, and this point is so well made in this folk tale of two porcupines who went out at night to eat the maua flowers. One of them died instantly when a falling maua bud hit him on the head. As you see that line on top of your screen, this distressed the other porcupine, asked the maua tree, "Tapu, tupu, tapu, tupu, raat kahe gire? Pitter, patter, why do you fall at night?" The bemused mahua tree replied, "Sungri ke mungri, raat kahe nikle? Silly Billy, why did you step out at night?" Now, these families go in the morning and collect, as you can see, these ladies doing uh, these flowers, and then they are dried, sun dried, as this gentleman. You can see the ones behind. You can see the color from drying. The ones in the foreground are fresher, and they store it, and when they also, when they need cash, because they can't store a lot of it in their homes, they sell it to the traders who store it and then sell it back to the community when they need it at a higher rate. Now, the excise rules allow only 5 liters of mahua to be kept at home for personal use and not sale, but Goa is an exception. There are some startups in India who have, one is Bombay based, I guess, one is Goa, who have started bottling mahua spirit. Hopefully, we will have an Indian palinka soon, or maybe Indian Scotch. Who knows? But it may help these communities who depend on this flower. Okay. So these are some of the other efforts going around the country, different parts for conservation of resources. I'm not going to read through that. I'll let the slide be up for a few more seconds, then we'll move on. But important thing is that partnerships between communities, government, and non-government agencies are forming for conservation, and people who have so far been silently keeping this tradition alive are getting their due recognition, as we will soon see. Here, this lady, you might have seen her recently on television. She received the Padma Shri Award from the President of India. She's Tulsi Gowda from Uttar Kannada, as you can read, and says there, speaks the language of the forest. Now, what that means is she can identify the mother tree of every species in that area, no matter where it is located, and she's an expert in collecting seeds from these mother plants. And she has been assisting the conservation, afforestation efforts of the local forest department in Uttar Kannada for many years, and she herself has planted more than 100,000 trees. Now, these mother trees are very important because these, you don't take any planting material from any tree. There are provenances, and then they have to identify good genotypes and phenotypes, which is genetic material and physical characteristics. And then you have to take the genetic material from those identified trees. And that is why her contribution is immense, though silent. and it is great to see her recognized. Otherwise, jungle mein mor nacha, kisne dekha. Now, the question is, why did the ancient communities put up so much emphasis on harmonious coexistence with their immediate environment? Why did they elevate the conservation of ecology to a dharma? Why did they imbue the elements of nature with divinity? What matters more is because they did these traditions and ethos have survived centuries. And let us look at some, and it has brought India to a unique position in the world today. And let's see what that position is through some statistics in the next slide. Okay, as you can read from here, we have on one hand significant share of biodiversity of the earth. We are eighth, as you can see, of the 16 mega biodiversity countries or regions. On the other hand, we have one of the largest as well as the youngest population with their desires and aspirations for a better life. And we as a nation also have certain aspirations, and in both spheres, we have taken up on one hand leadership of environmental conservation by taking a leadership role in Solar Alliance. We have targeted to increase the share of non-fossil fuel to 40% by 2030. We have urged the G20 nations to bring down per capita emission by 2030. So we are taking a leadership position there. At the same time, we have set ambitious targets for economic development as well. So it's a challenge. The question is, are we up to it? And can some of our traditions that we just learned about, can it help, or are they just something that we can just feel good as things of the past? Do they still hold relevance? Can it be like these two Arjun trees? If the analogy is one is development, one is conservation, can they go hand in hand and create a W at the top? It's a win-win for both. Whose W is this? This tree, these trees are from the uh, sacred groves of Jharkhand, and very quick and more importantly, can our living traditions guide us in this endeavor? Now, the quick note about the Arjun trees, I'll take another 30 seconds to explain this. The Arjun trees are, the bark of the Arjun tree is a heart tonic and is used in Ayurveda. Arjunarist, if anyone has heard. This Bhagat Baba I mentioned also used to give this bark of this tree to make tea, Arjun tea, for the heart patients. Uh, and another thing is that Arjun tree is are found next to water, or if you are lost in a forest, especially in central India, and if you are looking for a stream, look out for these trees, and they are very identifiable with their light colored bark, and they always grow in clumps. So won't find rarely do you find a single Arjun tree growing in any place. And if you happen to go near this tree, you will find that there is a stream nearby. 10 out of 10, let's say you at least 9 out of 10, there are, because exceptions in nature, and nature does throw surprises at us from time to time. With that said, let's move on to the last slide. Here it is. I'll leave you with this. So it it really puts everything into perspective. Basically, what we have been hearing, we have borrowed this from our future generation. We haven't inherited this from the past. And this is the preamble. As you can see, this village Menda Lekha is in Maharashtra, and this is one of the first villages to have received the community forest rights under the Forest Rights Act of 2006. And in fact, they were on the forefront for in the struggle to get that act passed. And they are also for the first community to complete people's biodiversity register, beg your pardon. And later on, that became a national program as part of the Biodiversity Act 2002. And today, about 70% of the country, people's biodiversity registers have been completed. Kerala, of course, was one of the first states to complete these registers. And these, once they are completed, this will have a document of our precious biodiversity resources. With that said, I thank you everybody for your patience. I know I've exceeded the time limit, but thank you for your patience, for continuing to listen in. And I would like to thank the Embassy of India once again, the Amrita Shergill Cultural Center, and the director, Ms. Tanuja Shankar. Good night, Shabba Khair, stay safe, you is Sakat. Bye bye.